I'd like to welcome everybody here today, and before we get started, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and to the elders of all the communities this conversation reaches. My name is Zuva Gaverwa, and I was the winner of the 2021 Plain English Speaking Awards. I'm thrilled to be hosting this event, which brings together art and stories, as our performers present their work. A selection of works from the National Gallery of Victoria's Queer exhibition will be projected onto the screen. We invite you to take the time to immerse yourself in this creative space. Now, first up, I would like to introduce Charlie Mackenzie. Charlie is a 14-year-old artist based in Melbourne. She mainly works in musical theatre, but also writes her own original music. Her intent with her music is to capture the feelings you can't put into words because you don't quite know why they are there. She currently trains at Dan Hamill Performance Coaching in musical theatre, but is also exploring her writing skills with them. Please welcome Charlie.
Sometimes I wonder if I chose the bad guy to be in my novel. Sometimes I wonder if you knew that you were hurting me and meant to. 'Cause I don't know what you want, something more, or a friend to use once and dispose when you're done. So I don't believe you when you say you'll renew the moments when you had me questioning my will to survive in this place of horror and grace. My music, my art, and my heart. If you were never gonna stick to the end of the race and run off the course and then hide your face, why love me in the first place? If not to twist up my brain and drive me insane to amuse you. Well, it worked, I'm insane with the pain of just wearing the sweater that still feels like you. And did you plan this all along? Did you think I'm not strong enough to survive your abuse? 'Cause you couldn't have cared less about all the breaths that I held in, not wanting to blow down our fragile demise in this place of horror and grace that I grew to know all too well. If you were never gonna stick to the end of the race and run off the course and then hide your face, why let me love you in the first place?
Thank you, Charlie. That was an absolutely breathtaking performance. Next, I would like to invite Eric Vienne. Eric Vienne is a Year 10 student in Melbourne and has an interest in expressing his thoughts through creative writing. He is the 2021 Out Loud Poetry Slam champion in the Year 9 to 12 category with his poem titled, I Love You. Alongside this, he enjoys listening to music, shopping with his friends, fashion, and calligraphy. Please welcome Eric.
What if I told you, once upon a time, in a world far from here, the stars glimmered a little brighter. The sun smiled a little warmer. The water rippled a little smoother, and the sky embraced us still a little softer. And so we all lived, happily ever after. Except, for once upon a time indicates the somber truth that what we have now is not this picture-perfect happily ever after. Tonight, this sweet melody transfuses in unison with the delicate reflection in the water, each small twinkle sparking a further sense of ataraxy, but these thoughts in my head act like a suffocating weighted blanket, silencing my wishes and dulling my senses. A paralyzing repeat that taunts me time and time again are these words that I want to convey. It feels like a euphonious rhythm that sounds so complete, but so empty from beneath. A song with a blissful persona on the surface, but a tsunami of melancholy from inside. Every person in this world has a spirit, defining them with pure distinctiveness. The colors in the sunset represent these everlasting characteristics, each color so pale on its own, but once together, a breathtaking view that's an enchantment with guaranteed effect. These colors in the sunset slowly fade away, to reveal a velvety coat of ominous black, tainted with the presence of splattered white stars. Black and white. Such contrasting colors, yet such compatibility with each other. And then the sun rises again, unveiling a newfound zest of hues, marking an incoming and treacherous quest. Is this what we could be? When one's colors fade into pure nothingness, they are illuminated by glistening stars, helping them to rise once again. This sweet melody makes me wonder, if the if in what if became this utopian reality, would it mean that our happily ever after could be what Romeo and Juliet didn't have? Do you know how I feel? This immersion resembles that of a secret garden, where overgrown lilies and daisies infest about, hiding the weeds and thorns that cultivate underneath. But even if our own songs on these screens contradict, once they're put together, a timeless melody that sways in the luminous night is produced. Our souls would pounce symphonious, longing for one another because it's you. In the end, all that's left for me to ask is, do you think of me too? Do you lay your eyes on me too? Do you look for me in a crowd too? Do you feel this way too? If so, would we complement each other like the sky and the stars? Would our hearts beat as one? If so, could I mutter the words, I love you too? Thank you.
That was an incredible poem and did such an amazing job of capturing the sweetness, but also the complexities of love. And on that, I would like to ask you, why do you think love is such a universally written about emotion?
I think love is a very interesting topic in general, and it's one of those topics where we can see how it's progressed over time, especially in writing. So, for instance, I mentioned like Romeo and Juliet, and then nowadays we have like TV shows that portray love. But I think it's very universally written about because it's not like a one size fits all. We all sort of are able to incorporate our own thoughts, and it's very subjective. So I think it really showcases our individuality.
Thank you. Next up, I would like to introduce Red Brazil. Red is a 13-year-old from the Macedon Ranges. He plays soccer and guitar and loves the Beach Boys. He likes to have fun with his poems, with rhymes, different language, and new topics. Welcome, Red, please.
We see the world from your wrist, forced to watch you turn and twist. Tick, 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 tick. We never sleep, that you insist. We're forced to work through rain, storm, hail, and mist. Tick, 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 tick. We've lost our taste, our sense of smell, since we've got no food in this eternal hell. Tick, 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 tick. Please, you have so much and we have so little. What we wouldn't do for just one skittle. Tick, 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 tick. God, this is hard work. We slave away night and day, and our great reward is to hear you say, it's 2:30. Tick, tick, stop. Us watchers will have our day. All us swatches and cutches and seekos and fitbits, we'll show you all your misfits. We'll sneak up in the dead of night, detaining the wretched humans with the power of fright. We'll tie them up and throw them in jail and keep them there until the morning light. And on that day we'll have our say. We'll pin you to our wrists, and you may scream and writhe about and shout and turn and twist. But what you do matters not, for the watchers will start anew. We'll tear down the world and build it up much better than you. The birds will sing louder, the sun will shine brighter, and sing with the birds we will do. We'll bring watch towns, watch houses. We'll build them so tall they'll make yours look like ounces. And oh, most importantly of all, it'll be you telling us the time. Tick, 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 that's all you'll do. Just like for centuries what we've had to do. And as for us, we'll dance and shout hooray. But until that extraordinary day, we wait and tick-tock our blues away.
What a wonderfully whimsical poem, Red. My question to you is, what is the best place to find inspiration for such creative new ideas?
The last place you'd look. I think, yeah, when I came up with my idea, I was just looking around for anything really, and I asked my watch out loud, what would you tell me to do? And then I thought, whoosh, thank God no one was around to hear that. But yeah, it's the last place you'd look that you find the best ideas. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have Finan Hanny. Finan is a 16-year-old born and raised in Melbourne. He is in VCE, into music, reading, and sport. He was previously shortlisted for the Buchanan Literary Awards and has a budding interest in fiction writing. Please welcome Finan.
Worm is caught. The magpie chirps triumphantly by the side of the creek. Behind him, wattles sway and with the bottle brushes too. Flying up to the shade of an old gum tree, magpie wolfs down his prey. Looking up is a great blue wash of sky, reaching out as distant clouds part for the arrival of the midday sun, the great light. Rocky grassland stretches out to a rise of mountain along the horizon, and in the distance of his view, magpie can see the square quilt patch farms. The nest needs work. Shiny, fluff, insulators and attractors, all awaiting him there out under the great day. Leaping from his perch, magpie searches the dusty ground, surveying life beneath him, keeping the eucalypt with its nest in the back of his mind. He settles down next to a jagged rocky outcrop and collects a loose branch in his beak. He stalks the bush, unafraid and determined. His eyes are wide, his beak is clamped tight. Suddenly, an eye peeks out from behind a rock. Magpie freezes and cocks his head, a threatening detail. Then, the eyes double as a great reptile clambers out onto the sun-soaked rock. Magpie is still frozen. All is still as the monitor lizard stares hungrily at the black and white bird. Fly, 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 it should have gone, but his wings, they don't open. They flank magpie rigid as he stands his ground, his patch among the grass and rocks beneath the sky. The lizard pounces for its prey. All is still and all is quiet as its jaws tear up feathered flesh. The wind stops just for a moment, and then everything moves on, as though nothing much has changed. Bird is caught.
That was amazing, and a lot of vivid imagery with the magpie and the gum tree. So I'm curious to know, how does your identity as an Australian kind of influence your writing?
I think the imagery of the countryside was very influential, especially in this writing. I used the prompt of nature and that sort of setting, which was sort of in the background of my childhood a lot, sort of form the basis for that story, and I often like to incorporate it because it gives a sense of homeliness, especially when I'm writing them.
Cool, thank you. Up next, we have Juliet Beatty. Juliet is a 14-year-old girl who has been fortunate enough to grow up with a passport constantly in her hand. While finding her home in United States, Malaysia, and Australia, Juliet has found a love for reading and writing. The diversity of storytelling throughout these cultures and lands is her inspiration. Please welcome Juliet.
Pretty girls don't eat chocolate. Not since they were 7, when they were blinded by what they thought was chocolate-covered heaven. Maybe back when sparkled rubber bracelets hugged their wrists. But now chocolate's just another thing pretty girls resist. Pretty girls don't eat chocolate, so don't you dare open that box. Don't let that perfect row of flavor look up at you and mock. Agonizing waves of guilt will crash through and strangle that ill-fated mind that holds true. Oh, and trust me, that worthlessness, it's worse than it sounds. No life vest will save you when self-hate sucks you down, 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 down on the school nurse's bed, you're 9. It's the first time you felt the air leave your head as you lay in the sheets at the edge of her bed. She's asking if you've eaten and you're shaking your head because pretty girls don't eat. Instead they hold. Pretty girls, they hold, not earn. Hold and bench weights of meals. They don't learn. Grasping to every calorie that they need to waste. They sprint through every losing race and they're so tired. They miss the days from when they were a child, when chocolate was a delight. They long for and savor every bite. Food meant fuel, and fuel meant you could stream down the field and dance with your friends. You can't remember the last time you've danced. Can't remember the last time you'd used what little energy you had for anything other than drilling out any calorie. Bleeding out every calorie you let into your body. You hate that you're like this. You hate that you're even tempted. Chocolate's overrated. Here, have some gum. Just gum on it all day until those taste buds go numb, because chocolate makes you fat, ugly, and a fool, meaning, oh my gosh, it's over. No chance of being cool. Popularity's out the window. Social life is skewed. And how will you punish yourself? You'll feed yourself no food, and now that you're a loser, now that your life's a chore, you might as well just shove that fat body of yours out the door. Oh, to be 7 again. Sparkled rubber bracelets on my wrists. No taste can transform and warp time in a twist the way that chocolate does. Meeting my lips, I want to hold it and eat it and love it and swallow it, and I'm a pretty girl who just ate chocolate, and nothing about me's changed, because the chocolate that sits in that tiny heart-shaped frame was not made to tear hearts and put pretty girls to shame. So I'll refrain from every expectation from society. I'll use my heart and voice, and I'll fight back from their propriety. We aren't pretty bites of cocoa that sit right still in a row, so why do we box up the real beauty that we never show? because in recent years, I rediscovered the simple beauty of that box. Each piece a rich, sweet treat, a deep, smooth cheat, cocoa melting as you eat. Brown truffles coated in warm syrup. Healthy, in a balance, and that box, you'll never fear it. Pretty girls eat what make them feel good.
That was incredible. Thank you so much for that. I have a question, and that is, with this poem that you've read to us, touching on so many of the themes that young women have to deal with in society, I want to know, who is a woman that inspires you?
My biggest inspiration is probably my mom, as she works in a male-dominated industry, and seeing her overcome the challenges that she battles every day by just being a woman is like super inspiring, and like she taught me how to be who I am.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Avery Yu, who'll be reading you their poem.
Today, I wake up. I grab a piece of toast and I sign into Compass, 4 minutes late for my WebEx. Yesterday, I woke up. I opened my eyes to a crowd of millions and I joined them. Today, I lie in bed, procrastinating work and losing focus in seconds, opening Discord and telling myself just another 4 minutes. Yesterday, I waited in that crowd, hoping, wishing people would listen, would hear us, opening Twitter and shouting my thoughts into a void. Today, I listen to music. Every other song an ad tells me staying apart keeps us together, but yesterday we would move as one, together in a crowd, showing up in one district, packing up and disappearing, reappearing in another as others joined. We would shout, "Lanza Hatoy," and we'd hold our umbrellas up for freedom, to stand up to a superpower, and to shield ourselves from the downpour of ink, rubber bullets, pepper spray, 10,000 canisters of tear gas, getting in trouble for wearing black, getting arrested for eating mooncakes with plastic knives, getting shot for not complying with the way we were told to think, getting beaten up by triads and getting assaulted by police, getting killed. But ideas are bulletproof. Today, I wear my mask. I follow restrictions. I try to keep away from other people on the tram. I wait, hoping, wishing for this hell to be over soon. It's funny, because yesterday they wanted to ban masks because of us. They barricaded the MTR in Central, trying to stop us from disappearing and reappearing. Today, I sit in my room, staring at the empty walls. The silence is maddening and peaceful. The emptiness is bearable and intolerable. I miss yesterday, when I could stare at a crowd of millions and truly say I am home.
That was incredible, and I think definitely deals with a lot of the topics that as young people you kind of have to navigate at the same time. And so I would like to know from you, what place do you think protest has in creating a new future?
I think protest is important because it's loud. It's a very loud way of saying that you disagree. And in today's society, and I think definitely in the future, we're gonna need to be loud to be heard.
Absolutely. Next, we have Mason Johns, who is a Year 11 student. He lives in Melbourne with his parents, a tabby cat, and a fluffy dog. When he's not at school, you might find him training with his athletics club, running with his dog, reading about running, or seeing his friends. Please welcome Mason.
By the time Mrs. Jordan and her son arrived at the orthodontist, they were already late. They had been issued one of their prized after-school slots, which were hard to come by, though Mrs. Jordan had heard from another mother that some other families were awarded these spots more frequently, as many as 2 out of 3 appointments. Anyway, they were still late, and they didn't quite know why. They were never normally late, so time had either passed faster than usual, or the trip had taken longer. The orthodontist's waiting room, which was very small and sparsely populated with chairs, was full when the Jordans entered, so Mrs. Jordan, who despised small spaces, decided to wait outside, and her son, who didn't want to enter on his own, waited with her. A few minutes later, when a grandfather, dragging along a teenager whose eyes were shut tight as if asleep or pretending to be, shuffled out of the room, Mrs. Jordan entered, steering her son in front of her. She'd decided the whole waiting idea was a mistake, since they would now appear even later than they actually were. Inside, no one seemed willing to relinquish their seat, so the Jordans remained standing. This brought Mrs. Jordan considerable difficulty. Her arthritic limbs could not relax on the hard flooring, and her son's tight, naily grip dug into the flesh of her wrists, making her fingers go numb. Her gaze settled on the receptionist, a dastardly middle-aged lady whose eyes met hers as if to say, "You're late, and that's the end of your after-school slots. Maybe you wouldn't be so late if you weren't so fat," and whose mouth actually opened to say, "You're late," but stopped short of the rest.
That was wonderful, Mason. I'd like to know, because there was definitely a very distinct characters in your story, how do you develop these characters and who are they based on?
Well, I have been to the orthodontist, so I guess I took inspiration from that a bit, but I guess the characters also sort of formed a bit as I wrote, but yeah, they're definitely sort of based a bit off real-life people.
Thank you. Up next, we have Sharon Zhang, a poet from Jiangsu, China, who writes confessional poetry about politics, identity, and art. A Melbourne native, their biggest inspirations are Jailers Delu, Max Stirner, and singer-songwriter John Daniel. Please welcome Sharon.
Hi, how's it going? Before starting, I'd like to acknowledge that we live, work, and reside on Wurundjeri land, and furthermore, Indigenous Australia is the birthplace of spoken word. I will be doing 2 poems for you today because I am a time hog, and this first one's called Daisy Buchanan. I want to grow up. In grade 1, I thought I was a child prodigy. I'd have a few articles written on me by a teen. No, by that age, I'd have my PhD. I'd beat time before it could beat me at 16. I can't wait to be a famous artist. I am terrified of office life, a 9 to 5, an hour of poetry on the side. I'm not like those other poets with an hour of poetry on the side. I want to starve for my art. I'd like to make Diogenes seem cool again. Let me subsist off a diet of nothing but my art and loving moonlit letters from teenagers with an unhealthy relationship to me. See, I can't wait to write a classic. I can't wait to rival Fitzgerald and Wilde and all those Russian authors who I could never pronounce the names of. I can't wait to finally gain some perspective. I'll be cool, calm, and collected. Stop thinking I'm defective. Nights spent giggling about drinking bleach. I can't wait to never feel sad again. I can't wait to never have to think again. I can't wait to drown it out in parties and partners and heroin. I can't wait to have my painting sold in an auction for $1 million to the highest bidder. Marked up, though my work has always been capitalist, condescending, condemnation. I can't wait to sell out my 12th grade graduation. I can't wait to be paid for that blockbuster adaptation of the novella I wrote when I was 7. I can't wait to go on Zoloft, but then be taken off it because being sad lets me make art, and art about dying is the funniest kind of, I can't wait to plan the outfit I'll wear when leaving the psych ward, selling the crayon art I made during my stay as a Patreon exclusive, setting reminders on my phone to end myself if I'm not successful by 26, staring at the blue-grey clock and rocking myself to sleep. When you're 16 and you genuinely hope one day you'll be at a place where you'll never feel safe alone, where does that leave you? The dread of working that office job, of not being the author I always thought I was, for making my whole life this extended metaphor performance for art on a stage, monologuing and praying it's impressed so I won't have to go another day working in government in Canberra. One day, I will look back on this time and I will want to slow down and I will be able to read all my favorite poets without hating them for being infinitely more successful than me. This second one's called Sacrificial Fire for Thich Quang Duc. He was the Vietnamese monk who killed himself in the 60s to protest the war. It's also about self-destruction and yeah. I feel progress shot into my spine like an epidural. I promise you, this was not all for nothing. Please try to leave. You do it if you were desperate enough. I remember pouring non-water into a water bottle, drinking orange juice from a mug, a sprig of rosemary, bitten down like grinded teeth. See, the wagon is going too fast for me to hold tight, and the ceiling has these rubber stars thumbed on, and it's just so, one should always aim for mercy, and then they should hit flesh instead. When I run out of toasts to give, take me to the graveyard and help me find dead people who I can cheer to, and then the living who I will soon be cheering when it stops chaos. Is napalm only ever napalm? Because, see, it's not the war you hate, it's the politics behind it that's a common mistake. And I don't mean to be cynical, I just mean to say it's not inherited history. That's all, a place scene nested in a dog's kennel, like those monks who cry for the Vietnam War, their hair thinning like fire. You always called it morning glory. Caption: Rebirth. Home made from a rib cage. Attention all termites. The abandoned building we feast in is about to explode. God bless all those who get out in time and also those who don't. Here is an old philosopher who was ridiculed, and here is his language unfurled into a single thread. In this retelling, there is nothing that compares to the undoneness of the monk. In this retelling, there is a tripwire sharpened into cursive belief. I mean like youth, cursive belief. It's juxtaposed. That's the oldest joke in the book. In this retelling, self-immolation was art and not protest, and my dress shone like a peacock's plume, but lit like a forest. You hold my letters to the editor against the sparse light of the half-hinged drawer. They could be confused for burnt teeth. If you throw them, they'll leave a scuff mark. Do it. Write 170 next to it. Call that the consequence of growing taller. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think in their own unique ways, in both poems, you kind of had a theme of authenticity and chasing what's real. So as an artist, as a poet, how important do you think it is to stay authentic, and how can you do that?
See, this is going to be a weird take, but I think that when you perform, you're never going to be able to truly be yourself. However, if you do want to go down that line of, oh, I express myself with poetry, you do owe it to your audience to, at least to some extent, try to be authentic, even if that's never going to be truly achieved.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Lee. Lee is a 14-year-old from Melbourne. They have been writing and creating from a young age and have a love of literature and the performing arts. They are very excited to be a part of this event, Teen Gala, and look forward to exploring more ways to express themselves and their ideas. Please welcome Lee.
What would you say if I said, hey, hi, my name's Lee. I use the pronouns they, he. What would you say if I told you that science says too that there are more than two genders, that biology shoots down your precious piles of protests and psychology about the label I use that prove that there are actually 6 sexes of chromosomes and fusions of genes that apparently define what's in your genes too? What would you say if I told you that even as neither a man nor a woman, I'm still scared to walk alone, still scared to walk at night, still scared to walk in broad daylight without my hands over my chest, dressed in hoodies to hide the breasts that define me as an object, by the men who leer out of car doors and windows, the men whose comments don't fall on deaf ears and instead steer me away as they say the things that I wouldn't quite like to hear? What would you say if I asked quietly for you not to call me a girl, not to fit me into that little box where swirls of discomfort, dysphoria, and disorientation dislodge the neutrality I fight so hard to maintain while you complain that your brain can't seem to manage to just call me they? What would you say if I let loose the tight-lipped mouth that keeps in the thoughts in my head, the noose that chokes the judgment from my throat in fear of what you'll say back? If I scream the thoughts and the things from the thick haze of my mind and you take it as an attack, what would you say if I told you that every single day I look in the mirror and I am upset because I see a body that doesn't fit right with my mind, and yet still you stand and say, boys and girls, setting pearls of doubt into the pout that sprouts on my face with every misgender and every she-her that's thrown my way? What would you say if when you call for boys to the left and girls to the right, I didn't move? If I stood in the center, away from the gender, away from the restriction of the binary that lays in a binary of weight on my mind? What would you say if I told you that every single time I speak, I'm conscious and cautious and careful of the voice that comes out from my throat, the sound that I choke on? Because if it's not when I've only just woke, I don't sound like a bloke, and instead just a broken girl poking fun at the deep croak of a masculine voice? What would you say if I told you not to apologize when I tell you that my name is actually Lee now, and I don't like the pronouns she, her, the pronouns that run amok, mocking the identity I hold? I don't expect you to stammer and bow at my feet, waxing poetic anthologies of apologies as an overdramatic fanatic attempt to make better the disaster that your half-assed attempt at asking me a question has apparently created, because, I mean, God forbid, you offend the queer non-binary person who merely just has a different idea of their identity to you, which is it's just shocking. And apparently I'm cocking the gun of sensitivity I hold at my side as a proclivity for every single negativity that comes my way. But no, I don't need you to apologize. I just want you to be so wise and unlike the other guys that you correct yourself and move on instead of feeling like you've dropped some sort of offensive bomb as if it doesn't happen to me every day, because, hey, we all make mistakes. So what would you say if I said, hey, my name's Lee, I use the pronouns they, he? What about you? Thank you.
That was an incredibly powerful poem that obviously speaks a lot to your identity. And so on that, I'd love to know, what is it about poetry that makes it such a comfortable medium for you to explore that?
I think poetry is such a beautifully open and fluid thing, and I think queerness is similar to that as well. So I think the two of those things can walk hand in hand together really well. And yeah, it's open and it's not restricted, and neither is sexuality or gender, and I think that's just a really good example of that.
Thank you so much. So we've now come to the end of all our performers, and so I'd like to open up for questions. If everyone who's performed tonight would like to come back on stage, and we can get some questions for the audience generally or to a specific performer. So, do we have any questions?
Hi, my question is, how many of you just take your inspiration from like poets, or like do you like draw from other mediums like music and film? Like anyone, feel free to answer, please.
I have always been very into literary stuff. Like my favorite band's the Mountain Goats, and they're obviously very literate lyrics. But I feel like when I write poems, it's often modeled off of another poet's style, and I'll like include nods to that poet or author in there. So in my second poem, A Sacrificial Fire, I added in a nod to Max Stirner, for example. Yeah.
I think imagery in writing is very important, and you source a lot of that from sort of unconscious things that you pick up, whether that's through film or TV. I like to think that some of what I write sort of derives from that, sort of things that I've seen, sort of things that seep into things that I'm not actively thinking about. But a lot of it is sort of that, because it's quite a big media industry to have film everywhere and TV all over and all the screens and all. So a lot of that definitely influences me.
I love to take inspiration from the things that I hear every day around me for my music. And sometimes I'll add little sounds that you probably wouldn't notice if you hear it. But when I'm looking back on it, I'm thinking, that's the sound of one of my teacher's very heavy footsteps that when I hear them coming, I think, oh no. Or it's the sound of a beautiful friend of mine's laughter, and when I hear it, I light up inside. But I turn it into music, and I often like to put those because they, for me, it evoke the emotions that I'm trying to portray, and I hope they evoke the emotions for other people too.
All right. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, I just want to say what an amazing night. You're all incredible, and it's wonderful to have you here at the Wheeler Centre. I'm Caro, I work here, and it's just beautiful to have you all on stage. My question is, how much of this work that you have performed tonight do you do as part of your school curriculum, and how much is just that you do at home on your own and inspired by the things that you read and see outside of school?
My poem was for school. I was asked to do that by my English teacher, but I think it really turned into something after that. I think people should do it more in English, because it really turned into a greater knowledge of language that's helped a lot since that time. So yeah, it's came through the curriculum.
Like Red, my poem was originally a school assignment. We did a unit on slam poetry, and a few poets came in and did workshops with us. And what I found about it was it didn't really feel like school. We got to the first lesson we did, we just wrote down all of our thoughts on a page, and I found that like, oh, this doesn't seem like school. But yeah, I found it didn't feel like school at all. It felt more free, like I said before. It's very open, and yeah, that was,
Well, I've always just loved writing poetry in my free time, but one day at school they told us that there was going to be a poetry evening and like a competition where you could just write a poem, and the theme was life is like a box of chocolates. And I kind of just like sat down and started writing, and I thought it was so amazing that like schools are like showcasing poetry and encouraging students to write it, because you don't see that very often nowadays.
Mine was also for school, but I feel like When I started writing it, it just became more of like from me instead of like just a school project, you know.
Seeing that the other two Out Loud winners also had to do this as a school assignment, I also had to do it as a school assignment. And we actually had like a year level based poetry slam. But I think one of the good things about it was that they gave us a very open topic scheme. They didn't really set any parameters. So I think that being able to, find our own intricacies through our thoughts is something that, should be implemented more. And if anyone has connections to the Department of Education, please let them know.
So, any more questions or?
I have a fairly simple but also maybe difficult question. I just want everyone or whoever's comfortable to answer what motivates you to keep doing what you do and keep creating artistic practice.
This is something that I'm actually really passionate about, so I'm so sorry you asked this question. I'm going to be talking for ages. So I think that one of the biggest things that motivated me at the beginning was just the fact that there were people better than me, and that angered me so much. Like, I talked about this in my poem, but I could just straight up not read books for 2 years because every time I read it, I'd be like, hey, this person was more successful than me. I hate them and I'm never going to read them again. But at the beginning, all my poems were very fictional, and I've been going a little more into the autobiographical. And I think that the drive to almost speak something true and meaningful. I feel like this is going to sound like so braggy, but especially in a world where there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation and language can be used to manipulate, I just wanted to, use language as a tool for good almost, and then that's what inspires me now. Also the fact that I could be like Virginia Woolf, all right.
Something that motivates me, it's very personal, I think. It's just writing something down and then reading it, and then reading it back to yourself and going, this is what I feel, or this is actually quite reflective. I think there's a certain satisfaction not in necessarily seeing other people enjoying it, but definitely reading something and going, I feel that. Especially when you read older stuff and it doesn't instantly make you go, why did I write this at all? I think that self-reflection is really important in motivation.
Just the want to get my thoughts out on a page. I don't know how else to put it. It's like venting, I guess. Just when you have an idea and you really want to say it out loud, but you don't know how else to say it. Like, I'm not going to go up to a friend and tell them an idea that I have, like, in a dream or something, but I can write it down in poetry and it works.
I feel like it's events like this and like groups like this of like performers who are so like talented and passionate about what they do, and reading it to people who care about what you want to say is like just so motivating, and you find so much inspiration from poetry, other poetry.
Usually the thing that motivates me the most is the fact that I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. Like, I think the little girl who constantly listened to Matilda and was way too obsessed with it would be so annoyed at me if I just went, nah, this is too hard. So I think I need to do her some justice and try the best I can.
All right. Any more questions?
Thanks thanks very much for sharing your works with us. I have a question about the relationship between your artistic practice and your friendships, and whether these are the sorts of things you talk about with friends, or whether you do your art in secret.
I definitely don't do art in secret. I talk a lot. So I talk a lot about things I love, and poetry is one of those things. My friends, like this whole time, have been so lovely about my writing. Yeah, and I feel like sharing things you love with the people you love makes them more special. Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't write in secret, but I think that, especially in my school community, creativity is quite fostered, and even after I won Out Loud, I was invited to join the writing interest group. But I think that in general, being able to share these sort of experiences with my friends, and like the first gala I performed here, they all watched the live stream, so I think having that support really adds an element of confidence and some uniqueness to my writing.
Well, for me, most of my pieces and my songs are about people that I'm really close to. Obviously, they don't know it, because that would be a bit awkward if I said, hey, this song's about you. They'd have some questions. But it's usually about how I observe the way they interact with me, or the way I interact with them, and the way that humans can kind of, I can't really explain it, like the way that humans just interact with each other, and that's who I usually write songs about, people close to me, but I don't usually tell them it's about them.
I think like for the longest time, I didn't tell anyone that I like to write poetry, and honestly, some of my friends still find it really weird that I just sit at home and write for fun, but it's just like amazing to like be in a group of people that everyone like cares about poetry, and like it's being advertised, and it's just great.
All right, any more questions? Okay, in that case, I think we'll close it off there. If you guys want to take a bow, and can we get another round of applause for all of our performers? So once again, thank you to all of our performers, and thank you to the NGV for the amazing images that were displayed behind us. Also to the Wheeler Center for hosting this incredible event, and I hope to see you all potentially once in the future. Thank you all for coming.